You are watching GrassRoots Community Television, helping you make television people watch everywhere. Broadcasting on cable channel 82 in Glenwood Springs and Carbondale, and channel 12 in Aspen, Snowmass, Basalt, and Elgibel. Free over-the-air broadcasts throughout the Roaring Fork Valley. All programs can be watched anytime, anywhere at grassrootstv.org.
Good afternoon. I am Dan Glidden, United States Navy, retired. Today's date is the 2nd of December, 2011. This interview is taking place at GrassRoots Television Studio in Aspen, Colorado. Today I'm going to be interviewing Nancy Bosshard, Second Lieutenant, United States Air Force / Military Air Command, Contract Command. Nancy's date of birth is 3/6/1944. Name of the technicians today are sound, Rise the Panses, cameras, Patrice Kahn and Grace Kennedy. Recorder is Karen Woodard. Nancy's area of service was in Vietnam with the United States Air Force and other places in South Vietnam. Nancy, welcome to the interview.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I have talking with you, and the more I read things that you've done, I think it's just it's another piece of the mosaic of veterans. Vietnam veterans, and I think it is just terribly exciting. So again, welcome, and thank you for being here. I'm going to short circuit, go a little bit out of the context here. Nancy, what I would like you to do, if you would, go to page 2 in your printout and read that for me. Top paragraph.
Should I explain about the diary?
Nope. Just I'll get to that. But
so I'll start with, I am having an experience that may well be the most remarkable and rewarding time of my life this year, 1967. So much is happening, has already happened, that I feel compelled to write it all down. And so, this, my diary.
Thank you. I am holding Nancy's diary. This is an absolutely just remarkable document written by her day by day of her 2+ years in the military. And I think it is a collector's item. It is just so rare to have this. And I think I'm delighted to read it, and it's wonderful. So,
well, Dan, I can't tell you what a joy it was just to find these things, to pull them out. You know, I've not pulled that diary out since. It had cobwebs, it had bugs, it had to be. So it was really a treat for me to have a chance to reminisce.
Well, good. Let's get right into the interview. Born in L.A., grew up in L.A.?
Born and raised.
Okay. And college?
I did. I attended in 1 year. I graduated from high school, went to L.A. Harbor JC. Then I went over to UCLA for a summer school class, and then I went on to San Jose State in the fall. And that was in 1962, and I graduated in 67 from San Jose State.
Okay. With degrees?
I did. I had a degree in sociology with a minor in psychology and business administration.
What was the atmosphere in San Jose State at the time?
Free speech movement, civil rights, love-ins, sit-ins, concerts.
Feelings toward the military and servicemen and women?
We didn't know them, but they became our brothers because they got drafted, everybody
Okay.
around us. I never felt animosity for military. I just didn't know anybody, and then I began to know. And of course,
Changed the picture a little bit.
yeah, it was a bad activity that we were in, and that I felt strongly from my education and from what I learned and researched and become educated about. But I never felt any animosity toward military, and I'm glad I didn't.
Good, good. Again, my insight into your diary. You were with a friend after graduation. You were with a friend down at the beach, and you met Carol Wilson.
Good
Tell me
memory.
about Carol Wilson.
Well, Carol was just a delight. We were all talking at the beach, and she had been working for about a year with Continental Airlines, and there had been quite a thrust at the college level to hire for flight attendants from the college graduates. So there was a lot of interest in my sorority, and a lot of my buddies had gone on to work for airlines. Well, Carol was saying that she really had a good feeling for Continental, and she wanted me to apply with them as opposed to going with the bigger airlines, the more well-known American and TWA. And I talk about that in the diary.
Okay. So you got in, she encouraged you to get into...
And I went right away. I went right down and interviewed and got accepted, was tested. Eventually got accepted, not that day, but I certainly made it through all the interviews and didn't waste any time.
And why? Why did you join? What was the incentive or the reasons behind you wanting to join?
Well, I just graduated from college, and I didn't really think I was ready to go into the field that I had specialized in. So I thought I would look around, and I wanted to travel, and this was such an opportunity to get a chance to get out of Dodge. I'd liked going up to college for a couple 100 miles away, and I wanted to have a little more of that kind of experience. So, you know, I was kind of footloose, and living at home with my folks in LA was not where I wanted to be particularly, so this was kind of a golden opportunity at the time. It was simply, the idea would be that I would fly commercially and go to, you know, points all about the United States mainland, but not thinking too much about going overseas at the time.
Okay. So basically on your, from January 27th of 1967,
When I graduated from
you
college.
graduated, April 1st, you're flying.
Yes.
Okay. The pictures here, is this your graduating class?
This is. This is
Okay.
from training, the gals that I went through training with. And you'll see I had my wings on it for the picture. We were very proud of that.
Are these the same wings?
They're the same wings.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very nice.
They're all
And
these
you're in the
shapes.
picture here?
That's me. That's
Very
second
nice.
from the
Where was your training?
Well, actually, it was in Los Angeles, and that was why one of the reasons it happened so fast for me is because I was living right down the street from headquarters. So they had me at the top of the list to pick up, see if I could, you know, pick myself up and start. I had 5 days to prepare.
Wow, wow. And this has to be a very, very rewarding document right there, but there's your...
And have I kept that proudly displayed?
Oh, I
all
can
these
understand
years.
fully, yes.
That's
So-
my certificate of graduation from Continental Airlines. Has successfully completed Continental Airlines hostess training course and is hereby commissioned to maintain the high standards of gold carpet service.
Okay. Very
Proud of
nice.
that.
So did you fly commercially? If so, for how long? Where?
I did. I flew for about a month commercially. And it wasn't the greatest time I had flying by any means.
How so?
Well, it was just very routine and very kind of dull. A lot of the flight attendants, I think, were just sort of burned on it. You know, nothing new, nothing exciting particularly went on. You just got up, flew a flight, stayed in a hotel for a couple of days, flew some more flights, and came home. Not much to talk about, really. I mean, in my diary, I don't speak about that month at all,
Okay.
interestingly.
So the dealing with the public was not all it was cranked up to be.
Well, you could say that.
I will say
I had
that,
a fun
please.
time one time. We went down to, out of El Paso to Juarez, Mexico, and the mayor of Juarez was on that flight. And he was in first class, and I managed to spill champagne on him.
Oh, that's a good way to start your first.
But that was one
Yeah.
of the more fun times.
Yeah. And then, what, a month into that, did you get orders? How did you get into the Air Force and MAC?
That was the time that LBJ took over as president. John F. Kennedy had been assassinated, and Lyndon Johnson brought in, escalated the war, and brought in many military air contract flights, MAC flights, in order to get the troops over. His press secretary was Pierre Salinger, if you remember.
Okay.
And Pierre Salinger was on the board of Continental Airlines, and so from the beginning of LBJ's reign, Continental was getting a lot of contracts to fly troops. And so they were looking for people to bid it, and the bid came through to my training, which is, I mean, usually you had to work for 2.5 years on the line before you might get a chance like that to bid on overseas trips. And they allowed 2 people in our training class. The 2 eldest got the first choice, and I was the second eldest. And I
2 out of how many?
Of the
group?
25 or 30 that we saw in the picture in that
Nice,
training class. Yeah, so it was special.
So do me a
Both
favor.
Elka and I took the bid. Elka was the elder gal. She was from Germany.
Okay. Turn to page 2 in your journal. Bottom of page 2. Read the first several lines of that, if you would.
You mean applying
Yes.
it? Okay. Applying at Continental Airlines turned out to be one of the wisest choices I could have made, the beginning of a whole new life for me. My timing was right on. After passing all the interviews and the tests the very same day I applied, things began to happen really fast. I had to go through a physical, get measured, etc. I was informed the next training would not start until March 15th. But then on February 10th, I received a call that Continental was enlarging the February 15th class, and could I begin right away? And then just as an off note, since I was living down the street from Continental's headquarters, I was high on the list of candidates to jump in at the last minute with this training, another fortuitous fact.
Read that last paragraph. I think that really kind of sums up, to me, what you were experiencing, what you were feeling. So
From the day I walked into training, life has been a whirlwind of excitement and unique experiences. Writing this diary is my way to never forget the great opportunities coming my way to convey my feelings, emotions, and adventures on paper before they become vague memories.
Well,
That was a worthy goal.
here's the book right here. So that is just so
It's amazing, isn't it?
amazing. I envy you, and I wish I had done the same thing. So, all right. So then let's get into what kind of training did you need go through for your military flights, or were you just here's the
Most
plane?
of the training that we needed had already been provided during the initial training with Continental, and for commercial flights, there really wasn't that much difference. The meals were very scheduled. There wasn't a menu, and every seat that could be put on a plane was put on a plane and filled. We had always 165 soldiers going over. Not a single seat ever that I can think of was to spare. So the training wasn't all that much different. Mostly it was things like, what to do if you got shot down, how to watch out for snipers when you're landing. Those were some of the more serious parts of the training. But the food service, which was so much a part of what airlines did in those days, that wasn't much different. You just heat and eat.
Heat and eat. Your first flight was from where to where?
Flew out of LA, took a leg over to Honolulu. First leg. Eventually, we went into Da Nang.
Okay.
We did it in legs. You would take a group so many miles or so many hours was what they based it on. You weren't supposed to work too many hours. So then a new crew would get on and they would take them a little further, and it was a slow go that way. Wind was at your face. Coming back, you could do most often all the way a flight. It might take 12 or 14 hours, but going over they would do it in legs.
So you never left the United States with one crew and ended up in
No.
Vietnam with the same?
Never.
Okay. Tell me about your first flight.
Oh, well, it was
Okay.
quite
Now,
unique. You want me to read about
page
it?
4, just a couple of the,
It
page
was
4.
quite special. It was really fun.
Read the first paragraph, or bottom paragraph on page 4 there.
Starting with first?
Yes.
Alrighty. First, I want to relate the classic trip we had flying into Hawaii. We carried Marines, a total of 165, no empty seats. How can I describe the sensation of getting on that plane to find 165 males looking right at you? It's unreal. Most of the guys were headed for Vietnam, but you wouldn't know it once we got in the air. What a time we had. Being I was new and working the front, I was awarded the honor of wearing the company flag.
Okay, so now, Nancy, let's
That
start with
picture,
the
don't
4
you?
pictures here. First picture, give me a little detail on it.
Well, as you can see, it was nothing fancy, but the guys were fairly proud of it. And since I was the newest person working up where the front of the plane was, where I could display it best, I was the one chosen to have the honor of wearing that,
Okay.
displaying it proudly.
Second picture, just
Yeah, these were guys that were on the flight. Just took a picture. You can see our outfits were, those were the summer outfits,
All
but
right.
they were awfully hot. So often we would just end up in our little blue apron outfits. And then eventually we would try to get guys' minds off of things. We would, create a party atmosphere, and we would trade clothes, trade camouflage.
maybe
or-
the third picture here, would you explain that to me? As I commented earlier, that's one of the ugliest stewardesses I've ever seen.
He actually had the wherewithal, the soldierly tendency that he put on one of our aprons. One of the Marines put on one of his our aprons.
Okay.
He rolled his pants up. He is ugly, isn't he? Those legs.
And the fourth one.
These are some of the Vietnamese that were on the ground that were there to refuel.
Okay.
South Vietnamese, we hoped.
Well,
You never knew,
yeah.
right? You never knew.
yeah. So the atmosphere, generalize it. The atmosphere of the boys, the men, what were they that you were taking over?
Oh, right. One of the things I mentioned that came back to me that I've actually never forgotten is when we took a group over, a flight over, they were just like us, young kids out of high school, college, carefree, and hadn't had a lot of experience in the world and had no idea what they were going into. So, easy to create that party atmosphere so we could take their minds off of what was happening. And then the remarkably striking difference is that when they came back, it was a whole different atmosphere, and they were very serious and very tired, very exhausted. Just a year and a month in that foreign land just wore them out. You never could sleep because you know who the enemy might be around the corner lurking.
Yeah.
You really slept with one eye open.
Nancy, why don't you go page 5?
Okay.
You can see the last big paragraph. There, anybody in capital letters. I mean, you said reasons for celebrating parties,
Oh,
4th of
okay.
July, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, anybody's birthday. Read that next sentence or part that begins with but.
But on the return flight out of Vietnam, the plane is more like a morgue than a celebration until we hit the USA. It was rather apparent our boys had become men, and they were exhausted. They pretty much slept the whole way back to the mainland. I could sure tell that a year-plus service in Vietnam can have a dramatic effect on our troops. I will always remember how, when the plane would land back in the States, these worn-out troops would jump up and yell hooray at the top of their lungs. It was
Boy.
a beautiful sight to see. The
Um,
joy, the relief.
How many flights would you guess in total that you flew?
So hard to know. You were up and down, you were back and forth, your schedule would change, you'd be out 4 days longer than you were supposed to, but if there was ever a routine, it would be 10 days away and 10 days home and 10 days away.
So
didn't matter if it was Christmas or New
safely
Year's.
to say probably hundreds. And didn't this, there's got to be this emotional roller coaster of the up, that they're happy, you're entertaining them, life is good, going over, without, and as you mentioned, they're not knowing what they're getting into, but then that coming back has got to be bittersweet, because some of them didn't come back.
And that would be true. We would be scheduled, of course, to have 165 military on a flight returning to the mainland, and sometimes there'd be 1 or 2 seats that were empty because they had been hit by a sniper right there at the tarmac.
How did you deal with that emotionally? Did you confide with your other stewardesses? Did you talk with people? How did you deal with that? To me, it would just be a roller coaster.
It was war.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Jet lag. Time. You wake up, you go, leave one place, and you arrive the day before you left or whatever. Did you have trouble with that?
It was crazy. I actually thrived on it. Some people did. Most people really struggled with it. It was tough. But for some reason, I could sleep anywhere, and I did. Did anytime
You're
you got a
lucky.
chance.
You're one of the fortunate.
Yeah. I was.
Yeah.
But I think after that long a time, you do burn out eventually. It's hard.
Yeah. So, you mentioned 3 airports that you came into in Vietnam.
Saigon, Da Nang, and Cam Ranh Bay were the 3 air bases that we landed.
Do you recall the first time you opened the doors of any one of those airports, what it was like?
Hot.
And?
Humid.
And 100-degree temperature and 110% humidity.
Well, the most striking part, of course, is that as you were landing, you had 4 flight attendants. You each took a position northeast, southwest, and had an eagle's eye outlook for snipers, because they were after you all the time. Mm-hmm. And mortar shells could have been, also.
Yeah.
You just never knew.
Impressions of Saigon, Tan Son Nhut?
Never got off the
Never
plane.
got off. Okay,
well,
now this.
Not supposed to ever get off.
Okay, so Saigon, I think you mentioned Da Nang was an entirely different. How so? Different airport, different approach.
Well, the jungle was so right up to the base that you barely could see the base for it, and therefore they were able to have snipers positioned much closer than at the other 2 airports.
And Cam Ranh Bay?
No, not much. Didn't hardly fly in there much. Nothing much happened.
Okay.
Just usual routine. You flew in late at night. It was always dark. You'd usually get in around 2 in the morning, and they'd do a quick turnaround, and you'd be gone. You'd be bringing the troops back as fast as you could. Yeah. We cleaned up the airplanes. We didn't even have people coming on board to do that.
So, with one exception, which I'll get to, you never got off the plane.
That's right.
When you had your R&R or 10 days off, you could travel.
You could.
Bangkok, Okinawa, Wake, Hawaii, Japan, Philippines.
Those were all work-related. I'd been to Hawaii the year before I started flying. That's the only place I'd ever been outside this country. But no, the rest were all service-oriented.
Okay. So, all right, yeah.
You'd fly dependents once in a while. That's why we ended up in Tokyo. We took the dependents. You know, they weren't all always military.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned kind of the civilian passengers were not all they were cranked up to be. What are your memories of the military guys that you had, either
You mean
coming
the
or
boys
going?
going over that became men on the way back?
Yeah, but you mentioned there was, I mean, there was no. Did you ever feel any kind of pressure? I mean, to, you know, you've got to take them under your wing. I mean, you obviously entertained them. You'd train, you know, get their mind off going to Vietnam.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or you'd write letters, you know, you would get their address and they'd get your address and hope that you can give them some kind of inspiration along the way or some kind of support.
Yeah, yeah. Looking at my cheat sheet here, the one time that
Yeah,
you got
did good making up those notes.
the one time that you did get off of the plane, it was in
Da Nang.
Da Nang. Would you
scary place.
would you detail what that involved?
Well, we didn't exactly understand what was going on. We started to clean up like we were supposed to do, and the captain, he wasn't hearing of that, and he said, "You guys, we need you to settle something here." And we kind of figured there must be some sort of a bet going on that involved flight attendants. So off he whisked us in the van over to the tower, where they were having a contest. All right.
So this is the control tower for all of the planes coming in and out of Da Nang.
That's right.
Okay, so how many of you?
Oh, there were the four of us.
Okay. Got into the tower, and
Well, they did. They had this contest going between Continental and Pan Am flight attendants who would leave the greater number of unmentionables.
souvenirs.
Souvenirs.
Okay.
Well put.
Okay.
And clearly Pan Am was ahead, and we couldn't have that. Although we were sort of reluctant at first, we swallowed our pride and let our patriotism take over.
And without blushing too much, you quickly won the competition.
We did.
And may I inquire as to what was left behind?
We had individual nylons in those days. 2 different nylons and 1 garter belt and a pair of pink bikini underpants.
Nice. So that put Continental back
we
on.
went over.
Very
we
nice.
definitely were in the lead.
Very nice. Okay. So, photographs you have, we looked at some. You obviously kept a diary.
I did.
Okay. Now we'll come to a couple items. Would you tell me about the?
You don't want me to read about it from the diary?
If you can recall a place.
Oh, I bet I can.
Okay. I thought I'd written it down. But I think this, this sheet of, this blanket is just so
Precious, isn't it?
precious. Yes.
This was right at the beginning. This was my first flight. And after I applied and was accepted,
I think page 5. Yeah,
we
page 5.
do go to 4. Here I am on my very first Mac trip. Is that the one? Flying
Yes.
overseas is so extraordinary. I wonder if I'll be able to get the complete experience on paper. But I'll do my best to fill you in, diary, on what I believe will be one of the greatest times of my life. Karen Pope, Mouseketeer, was also assigned to this trip, which is unusual to have 2 newbies on the same flight. Karen and I trained for Mac flights together, and she lives across from me at the apartments. Another remarkable twist of fate is that Carol Wilson is also on my first trip. Remember, Carol's the gal I ran into at the beach who convinced me I should apply with Continental, and I haven't run into her since. The 4th flight attendant is Jan Mari, and that's Carol's preferred partner. Karen and I felt really fortunate to be paired up with these 2. For the first meal service, Karen and I split up. I worked the front with Carol, and that's where you saw me in the parading around in that flag, Karen the back with Patty. The two senior girls must have determined we knew what we were doing. From then on, Karen and I worked together, and it was a bit of a riot. Having so little experience, we were super slow. But this is the way to quickly learn, since there is no one else to take over. We were laughing so much, it's a wonder anything gets accomplished. One thing we are certain of, we give the slowest food service on the line. First, I want to relate the classic trip we had flying into Hawaii. We carried Marines, a total of 165, no empty seats. Let's see, I think I talked about that. Being I was new, I wore the company flag. I mentioned that.
I think go to next page 5.
That's where you were looking. The leg took us as far as Hawaii, while our boys, they were special buddies by then, would be going on to other points. Before we landed, Karen and I both were presented with Continental Airlines blankets autographed with a felt pen by a number of the guys who to have as a remembrance of our first flight, and I have saved that.
Oh, that's absolutely just...
It's a treasure, isn't it?
You wore our colors well. Nancy, thanks for a good trip. To the best. Hostess. Lil hostess.
I know.
And what was the other item? Why don't you hand...
Yes. Then, just before we were to deplane, these adorable soldiers presented me with a Snoopy cartoon paperback book signed by every one of them. The first page reads as follows: To Nancy, we, the undersigned, congratulate you on handling 165 jarheads with the greatest of ease on your maiden flight.
Those two items are just
They're
so...
just treasures.
Yes.
I knew I would always cherish them, and as you see, I have. You know, I've only taken them out, the book and the blanket, 2 other times. I've never taken that diary out before, but I took them out for our initial dedication in 1987 of the Memorial for Vietnam Veterans, and I took them out at our rededication 4 years ago. For our 20th anniversary celebration of the memorial dedication. So, but you know, they're such treasures, and who knows, you probably know somebody's name that's in here. The cute comments and the silly drawings, they're just precious, too precious. I'm so glad I've been able to hang on to them.
Oh, that's priceless. That's just absolutely
they are,
super,
aren't they?
Yeah. Well, that's between the journal and things like that. I mean, these are just absolute treasures.
40+ years later.
Oh boy, yeah.
Jeez,
that
hard
is
to
so.
believe, huh?
That is just so great.
I have a few other little items that I brought along. I don't know if the camera can pick them up or not.
Don't.
They're just my pins from the Women's Memorial. I'm a charter member.
Okay, I was going to get to that.
My pin from Continental.
So kind of winding down on this now, do you recall the day this ended for you, your last flight?
No, it wasn't particularly anything that interesting or different. I had a fellow that I'd been seeing on Wake Island that I spent the last day with him before he headed back to civilian life. But no, it was just are you thinking of one in particular that I mentioned?
No, I just, I mean, in comparison to the military,
the first, no.
You know, you're ushered out, all the paperwork and, you know, brain damage on all of that.
Oh, you know what? I had decided I was going to move to Aspen by then because I'd taken that weekend pass, a $5 round trip ticket, and spent Labor Day weekend it was in '69. I spent out, just came to Aspen after a friend recommended it, and decided I liked it so much that that's where I was focused. I wasn't thinking too much back home. I decided, I went back and gave notice and moved. It was time.
Well, that's a nice way to end that and a new beginning. So, came out here and you say 69?
I did in October of '69.
Okay, and what a little chronology, what?
Well, I came and I left, and I left and I came. I came to learn to ski, and then I'd go someplace for the summer or the rest of the year. But eventually I got involved with the advertising group, and I helped them set up offices around the country, mostly in the East and the South, Florida. And kept coming back here and having to deal with finding a place to live and, you know, the usual rat race and other job or whatever. Then decided if I was going to really ever make it my home, I should get serious, and I built a house in 1984 and started a business.
And you're still in business and still here?
in business.
No regrets?
No, not a bit. Over 25 years with A to Z Business Services.
Nice,
that I've
nice. And you mentioned a veterans organization. You mentioned the women's?
It's the Women's Memorial that's in Washington, or Arlington, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big facility. It's huge. I'm sorry that you can't see it because it's pictured well in this pin. It's they have a learning center, and I'm a charter member, and they would like all women of all branches, peacetime, wartime, whatever, whoever served, to please sign up and get involved, or, you know, let them know who you are so that you can be a part of their history project.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back just briefly here. You, on page 10, kind of miscellaneous memories, but, you know, how did this war affect you, your thinking? And I think this paragraph that you wrote just is
yeah. Wraps it up, doesn't
wraps it up. Would you read that?
And I was very interested in knowing what was actually going on with Vietnam from the time I was in college, and my sociology professors were very astute about the whole correctness of this non-declared war.
A letter from Vietnam.
Heart-wrenching. Got a letter from Ralph, my Army friend who I met flying into Vietnam. His descriptions are rather depressing, that the Vietnamese don't really care about this war, which is taking the lives of so many of our boys. Ralph told about several dreadful experiences, witnessing his buddy's head shot off, or being the only one left alive from his unit. I feel it is essential to learn firsthand from those serving on the front lines. Brings the reality closer to home, where people need to know the truth about what is actually taking place over there.
Well, I think that says it all.
Yeah.
So just a couple questions here, then I want to get to your memorial participation. Does your experience as a veteran play any role in your life today? I mean, it's
You betcha.
How so?
Well, I'm active with the Roaring Fork Veterans Commission.
Yes, you are.
We have services every Memorial Day and every Veterans Day. There was just one on November 11th. And I can remember after the dedication of the memorial back in '87 that it was just a disorganized and unplanned event that on Veterans Day and Memorial Day, a few of us would end up at the memorial. And those few have grown to hundreds, a couple hundred come. We have the entry to the 4th of July parade. We had the rededication of the memorial in 2007. And we had John Hofer come forward, Air Force, and bring the wall to Aspen, the wet replica of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very special event.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reading those names and finding how you could find the names.
Oh, yeah.
And all of the activity. It went on for a whole weekend, and for days and days, and it just was people all the time, nonstop. I was there at 2 in the morning one time, and that's when they came out of the woodwork, some of these guys, to look up their buddies' names.
Yeah. Well, now, do you think that a veteran is in some way different, if you will, from non-veterans? Do you think there's
No. I mean, there's the post-traumatic stress syndrome that some of people have experienced, but I mean, they're just regular folks. And they're my brothers, they're our uncles, our cousins are boys.
But do you find it hard to relate to non-veterans, though?
No,
But there's a closer bond with a veteran.
there is this very special bond
Yeah.
with the veterans.
Yeah.
It's just something that you experience, that especially flying into foreign lands and actually having a war go on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what to me makes your experience so unique is people are not aware of what you were doing, you know, and until it's brought to light, which I think this is done very nicely. It's very powerful.
Well, for the most part, what I've seen is that 20 years after the end, what was that, 1972? It was 20 years before anybody talked about it, any of us.
Yeah.
I know I didn't.
Yeah.
I know that my friends are still going, oh, you were in the military. Oh, really? I had one of my best friends say that yesterday when I told her to watch GrassRoots.
Oh my.
I know.
Oh,
I gave
wow.
her wedding reception. I mean, we go back like I've helped raise her kids, you know, her and her husband, and she didn't really understand that
No.
about me, because people don't ask, they don't think to ask, and it's not something you generally just jump in and bring up.
But I think partially as a result of the memorial downtown in Aspen, that
Oh yes.
people are becoming more aware of it, and I think we're seeing, you mentioned something, Nancy, as you mentioned, we dedicated this in 1987. And, you know, the turnouts were small, and I think, you know, part of the incentive behind that memorial was we're not going to let what happened to us as Vietnam veterans happen to the Iraqi war, Kuwait, Afghani.
The attitude.
But you've been an integral part of this. I mean, you've been in our ceremonies,
The attitude is just totally done a 180. Remember how awful it was when the soldiers came back from Vietnam?
Oh, yeah.
They didn't come back as a unit. They came back all by themselves, and they were left out there in outer space, and they were abused and bullied and spit on. It was awful.
Yeah, yeah.
There's none of that now, except you hear these cults sometimes going after returning veterans or veterans services. Other than that, it's huge support all throughout the community. It's so wonderful to just, if you just come and observe on the 4th of July, the parade entry going through town, people along the way just stand up and cheer, and there's so much appreciation and thank yous given, and certainly these guys, I look every time I say, these guys so deserve this.
Well, you're an integral part of that welcome home and the success of the memorial. So for that, I can't thank you enough.
Well, who are you to talk?
Well,
I came to that first meeting that you and Chuck Cole had to organize for a memorial to dedicate it to Vietnam veterans. They needed that recognition. What's evolved is just a beautiful thing to me. It's so absolutely correct, is that eventually it just sort of flowed into becoming the Roaring Fork Veterans Memorial. No particular war, but we have veterans from all wars come always out to all events.
I've often said it's a labor of love, but it's that it is. Anything else? Anything you recall, or memories, or something that we haven't touched on?
Well, I'd like to read about this, because so much of what we did was shopping, because we had access to the PX, and the discount, I didn't mention in my diary, but the booze especially, was so discounted that all our friends and all our family wanted us to get in. When I went to Japan, the electronics, and I mean, I had lists of stuff to buy, so we did a lot of shopping. The bargains in these foreign countries are phenomenal, and all our friends and family put in orders for those items that were well known to be very inexpensive: fabrics, electronics, watches, jewelry. Here is an excerpt from the diary about one shopping venture. Then we went on to base, to the gift shop, and I bought a nifty statue. It is made out of monkey pod, carved into a thinker. It'll make a good bookend. with the fine carving. It is truly a piece of art, and I love it. And the thing is, I still have it. And it is a piece of art. In my opinion, it is one of the finest pieces of work I've ever come across.
So this is the monkey
and
pod.
he's still my bookend.
Sweet.
Isn't that wonderful?
That's
I thought
very
you'd
cool,
enjoy
yeah.
seeing that.
Yeah. So here's the monkey pod.
Isn't that something, that carving?
Yeah.
I mean, he got the right
Oh yeah. Yeah.
stance, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Let's see if there's anything else. I wanted to mention that just the fact of preparing for this interview, it's been bittersweet because I got into all of this diary and I haven't even been able to read through it all, but under the memorabilia that I hadn't looked at for years, and what a joy it was to recollect all of those flying days with the airlines and my service in Vietnam with the Air Force. And initially, you know, I didn't really understand the value and the greatness of the experiences that I had, but certainly over the years, they've become more, just ever more precious to me, the memories and the experience and the opportunity to really support the military, going over to Vietnam as well as back here.
Oh yeah. Well, you have done a beautiful job of documenting it. So
yeah.
I can't thank you enough.
Thank
So,
you, Dan.
Nancy, a little token of our appreciation
Oh, good.
from the veterans.
And it's the right color.
Yes, ma'am.
Ha.
Yes, ma'am.
Ah.
So where it'll match your sweater.
Wear
It
it
looks
with
very
pride, I
nice. Nice
will.
touch. Yes.
That's right.
Okay, well, again, thank you. And now, for anyone wanting more information about the Roaring Fork Veterans History Project, or to make a donation, please contact Kip Hubbard at the Aspen Historical Society, phone number 925-3721. Thank you, Nancy, again, and thank you.
Thank you, Dan.